Old school judo. We miss it so much. A few weeks ago, actually a few months ago, I think I made a repost of on Instagram of a compilation of judo throws someone had made, and the heading was, old school judo was the best, or something like that. And when I reposted it, I was really surprised at how many, what I feel are truly heartfelt responses that I got in the comments. This was probably one of my most commented upon reels or stories. And I could just tell, like, people said, "We miss this judo. I miss this judo. This was the real judo. Bring back this judo." And I could just tell these were truly from the heart. And it was actually really touching to me to scroll through all these positive comments about what we call old school judo. So what we mean by that was, before there was some rules, pretty significant rules changes. In the past, yeah, competitors were allowed to grab the gi pants, so you could touch below the belt line in order to execute a throw. So that, for example, two main throws I can think of that are no longer allowed under this new no leg grabs rule is you can't do what we call the traditional kataguruma, which looks like a fireman's carry, because one arm is draped around or grabbing their pant leg. So you can do a modified version of that throw, but you can't do the traditional throw. The second throw you can't do, that used to be a major one, was what we call a teguruma, which is like a hand wheel. Okay, so what that basically means is, like in wrestling, what they call a high crotch grip. You're behind your opponent, and you scoop down and reach through their legs and kind of suplex them up and over. But in general, you just can't touch anywhere on your opponent below their belt. And the second major set of rules have to do with gripping, meaning how we grab or try to grab the sleeves of the lapel. Now, I'll admit that I don't even understand or know all these gripping rule changes, but my understanding is the rules changes were made in order to minimize the amount of time judoka spent what we call grip fighting, meaning just simply vying to get the grip that they want on their opponent's lapel or sleeve, and they want to maximize the amount of time people spend trying to throw each other. Now, part of the reason I think people are so heartfelt when they say I miss this judo is because they used to do that type of judo, and we all know darn well that if we did old school judo, there's absolutely no way we can step on the mat and try to compete under the new rule system. That's because, as one commenter said, I will automatically hansoku myself. And what that means is a hansoku make is an automatic disqualification. So, for example, if you just accidentally touch your opponent below the belt, even if you're not taking a strong grip, the referee's just going to kick you out of the tournament, Johnny on the spot. There's no recourse. You don't get one chance, another chance, and then you're kicked out. It's just right away you're kicked out. Same thing with some of the gripping tactics. If you do some of the old school gripping, you will automatically just get kicked out of the tournament. Now the problem is, for those of us who did old school judo, even though we could intellectually understand this new rule changes, our bodies have already been programmed, and our minds to a certain extent, to just automatically grip fight a certain way and then move a certain way. And for some of us, like for me, for example, I like to do what we call an ankle pick. I mean, it's just automatically programmed in as part of our repertoire, and our bodies will just automatically jump to these movements that we've done thousands upon thousands of repetitions of. So part of this, everyone feeling so heartfelt about missing old school judo is like this remembrance of things past, as we say, when we were competing on the mat and probably at our best in terms of our judo athleticism. Now, one comment I do really regret missing was from a fellow judoka that I shared the mat with, named Tony Kamal, and he passed away recently. Um, Now, he posted uh, that he was a competitor in the 80s and 90s, and he said, "Hey, I miss this judo." Um, he also mentioned the fact that we had better gis, we had thicker gis at that time. He said now they're wearing these gis that are kind of like loose pajamas, kind of exclamation question mark. So that's a whole nother kettle of fish. I still have all my old school, very thick judo gis. Again, I don't know if they said, well, these lapels are way too thick. That's why uh, we've got to make thinner lapelled gis now. I'm not sure what the reasoning is, but it's almost as if the IJF every few years has to change the judogi rules, because then every competitive judoka has to go out and buy at least $500 worth of judo uniforms, because you need a white one, a blue one, and a backup of each, technically speaking. So this might even be more than $500 at this point. It might be close to $1,000. But a good judogi will never tear, right? Like, why would you buy a cheap judogi if it's going to rip in the middle of practice or competition? So judogi manufacturers, by definition, have to make gis that will never tear. But then they'll never sell you another gi unless you grow or shrink. So I feel like the IJF is kind of a little bit in cahoots with the judogi manufacturers and says, don't worry guys, every few years we'll change the rules and then everyone will be forced to buy more gis from you. That's just my take on it. But getting back to why those of us who did what we call old school judo are so passionate and so remember it so fondly, it's not just about, because I was able to grab legs or I was able to spend more time grip fighting. It's really about how we scored an ippon throw. There's absolutely nothing like scoring what I will now call an old school ippon judo throw, because you have to send your opponent flying through the air. There's no part of their body that's in contact with anything. You turn your opponent into a projectile. They reach the arc of their path and then they head down towards the mat at the acceleration due to gravity plus a little bit of your extra help, and then they hit that mat with a big resounding dramatic smack, and you are standing on your 2 feet looking down at them while they're looking up at the ceiling, and there's no question in that instant who owns who. But at that point, it's not even personal. It's really the joy of feeling your ippon judo throw work. Like I said, there's just nothing like it, and anybody who scored ippon in one of those old school tournaments knows exactly what I'm talking about. You know that you hit this moment of absolute perfection, and this was everything you trained so hard for, and it worked. It's probably even going to be more dynamic in the actual competition than it is in practice, because you know darn well that your opponent is trying to do the exact same thing to you. So they're exerting a certain amount of force and using a certain amount of their strength to try to counter you or prevent you from executing your ippon, and nevertheless you're able to get that to happen. It's a wonderful, wonderful feeling, and that's what I think everybody says they miss the most. Of course, as a spectator, it's also wonderful to watch this in motion when you see somebody else execute a perfect throw. The one thing I will warn you about in terms of just watching clip compilations is you don't get to see the lead up to that ippon throw, and sometimes that's where all the drama lies, because there'll be a back and forth prior to this person being able to score this beautiful, beautiful judo throw. And that's where the sort of drama and the tension builds up before they get this beautiful throw. So do take your time to watch some old school judo matches in their entirety. Don't just watch highlight reels of judo. So to bring this back to the rules, again, the IJF changed the criteria for what they deem an ippon throw. Now, when a judoka scores an ippon, that means that's it. They win automatically. You can win ippon via your throw, or on the ground via a pin for 25 seconds, or if the person or if your opponent taps out due to an arm lock or a choke, or if they just go unconscious due to the choke, or the referee decides to stop the match because they're not tapping from the arm lock. But by far, I think one of the most sort of celebrated ways to win for a judoka is their ippon throw. Now, again, I'm not savvy to all the nitty-gritty details of the IJF's rules, but they took away this rule where you have to be standing in complete control, standing or in complete control when you score the ippon. So now what you'll see sometimes is judoka score an ippon, but they've rolled themselves into basically giving up their back on the ground. Yet and still, even though both people are on the ground, it's the person who initiated the throw that scores the ippon. So I think, in my opinion, it's a little bit less dramatic than if you require the thrower to be remaining on their feet. But these are the rules that the IJF came up with. So what are your fondest memories of fighting under the old set of rules? What were your most glorious moments on the judo mat? I'd love to hear about it. Please share that in the comments below. And I'd like to dedicate this video in memory of Sensei Tony Kamal. Rest in peace, Tony.